Welcome to the Travel Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Vandenberg. On our show, I interview and connect with leaders across travel, hospitality, and tourism. We talk leadership in our industry, what has shaped them, the successes, failures, and everything in between. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Rachel Humphrey, founder of the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance and interview host for DEI Advisors. The Travel Leader Podcast is brought to you by The Travel Leader, a leadership coaching and content company. I provide leadership coaching and workshops for individuals and teams to accelerate leadership performance. Learn more at www.thetravelleadercoach.com. Hello, welcome to the Travel Leader Podcast. I am so excited to be here today with Rachel Humphrey, the founder of Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance and interview host for DEI Advisors. It's so great to have you.
Thanks, Rachel. One of the great things about the Alliance is getting a chance to meet leaders I had never met before, and that is certainly how you and I have met. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I thank you for including me.
Yes, that is indeed how we met with my organization, Accelerate Women Leaders in Travel. I one day just saw this wonderful alliance of women in hospitality organizations that you founded, and I was like, I need to be a part of that. And that was, I think, almost over 2 years ago, I want to say, or a year and a half or something like that. And it has been such a pleasurable journey. The amount of amazing women leaders in our industry that I've met and the opportunity to work with you has been really wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that there are so many great organizations doing incredible things to elevate women in hospitality. So to have an opportunity to bring them all together to amplify one another's messaging and hopefully move the needle a little bit farther and a little bit faster is a real honor and privilege for me.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I discovered actually as I was preparing for today, I was looking back at your LinkedIn profile and I had either not seen it before or forgotten about it, but we have several commonalities that go beyond our shared first name. One is both having grown up in New England, but I also discovered that you had studied international relations and sociology. I have a background in political science, and my minor was sociology, and also had aspirations to become a lawyer. But you actually did that.
I did not know that. I knew that obviously that you are from Vermont. I grew up in New Hampshire. But I did not know that we shared the commonality of the areas that we studied. I went to college for international relations and Spanish and actually took some sociology classes to fill some requirements and absolutely loved it and ended up
Yeah.
I am a lawyer. I keep saying I was a lawyer. I'm technically still a
Yes.
lawyer. But I practiced for a little over 20 years before pivoting into the association space in a non-legal capacity.
Yeah. And now here we are, both in hospitality, having nothing to do with what we studied. But that's a great place to transition to jump into our conversation to get a little bit more of your background. I love to talk to my guests about rather than talking about their resume, sharing with us what is the red thread throughout your career.
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question. And I think that I've shared with you before. I'm at such a reflective point in my life right now, having recently retired, taking on some new roles and opportunities. I get the opportunity to really think through my life, think through my career in a way that I didn't when I was I call it on the hamster wheel every day working. I think until recently, I would have said I'm incredibly risk averse as a personality, as a person. But what I am finding is that the thread that weaves through my whole life is that with the greatest risks that I have taken have come the most unexpected and great rewards professionally, personally. I was practicing in Northern Virginia as a trial attorney. I was working for a criminal defense boutique firm. I loved it. I envisioned myself there doing that forever. I met a boy and fell in love, and we moved to Atlanta. And that was a huge risk, leaving my firm, leaving the reputation I had built there, coming and taking another bar, starting over again. And the legal market here in Atlanta was very, very different. I ended up pivoting practice areas and ended up in a franchise attorney space. And that's how I first got exposed to the hospitality industry. So, but for that big risk, I think my trajectory is very, very different. Fast forward to 20 years as a trial lawyer, I took another huge risk in leaving the everyday practice of law and switched over to be an association executive. I didn't even know what that phrase meant at the time. I just knew that I
Wow.
was really ready for a different challenge. I was really interested in being in the nonprofit space. And so again, a risk, to leave a career that I'd had and been very successful at for a long time, ended up again opening up this tremendous next chapter for me. And then a couple years ago, making the decision to retire. I've been very forthcoming that I thought I would die in a courtroom. You'd be wheeling me out at 100 years old. I could never imagine not working. I don't think anyone who knows me well could imagine me not working.
Yeah.
But yet, the stars aligned, and it was really an opportunity that I thought was worth exploring. Again, a huge risk. And that has now presented opportunities for me personally and professionally, through the Alliance, through DEI Advisors, for this incredible new chapter. So I think the biggest thread, shockingly to me, is that each time I have taken a terrifying big risk, I have enjoyed the next chapter more than I ever knew possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you bring up this theme of taking risks because I think it's such an important part of leadership. And I haven't talked about this topic with many of my other guests. But I'm curious about seeing yourself and reflecting back that you were a risk averse person or thought of yourself that way. What do you think motivated you to kind of change that behavior and start to take those risks?
I don't know that I was doing it intentionally at the time. I think that there is a comfort in what you know. I think the unexpected is very scary for a lot of people, me included. I talk a lot about sliding doors. I'm a big believer in, which door you choose can really change everything for you. So not having plotted out, I want to be here in 3 years, here in 7 years, doing this in 10 years, but really taking it as it came. I think also just evaluating my own personal happiness, for lack of a better way, maybe of describing it. I knew that I had found my life partner in my husband. And so that meant taking a risk to pursue a personal happiness that I was really looking for. When I stopped at the law firm and switched over to the association world, I didn't love what I was doing anymore. I thought I would. I thought I would love it forever. And I just didn't. And I didn't for a while. But I think the realization that I thought I was old, I was young, and to not really feel fulfilled, to not have that sense of satisfaction that I was really looking for, drove me to figure out what else was out there. And then the same
Yeah.
thing with retirement. I think as circumstances change, both, where we were in our personal lives, but also I had a great opportunity. We had just brought on new leadership. We had a new strategic plan. We had a great new path we were down. And I really thought, this is a great time to turn this over to a new group of leaders to lead in a direction and figure out what's next for me. It was in none of the situations have I had a plan. I mean, I'll say that. You
Yeah.
could say, how did you become a risk taker? When I left Virginia and moved to Atlanta, I didn't have a job. I had to take the bar again. I didn't know what type of legal career. When I left the law firm, I left without a job. I decided I'm going to take some time. I'm going to talk to people. What else do people do with a legal career? What opportunities are out there? And then when I retired, I took 60 days of a complete hibernation. I spoke to no one. I went to nothing just to really figure it out. So each time it has been a calculated risk, but it didn't have a plan. And so really just freeing myself up to try to gather information and see what felt good to me, what felt like the right thing. And fortunately for me, each one of those has turned out well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing some really important factors there. I mean, one of them, it seems like that, risk for you was first like being open to the possibilities that came along your path. And also like doing your taking that space and time to reflect, and also trusting that what was coming along your way and the timing of it, um, and making those leaps, with that trust in consideration.
Yeah, I don't know if I had that trust, Rachel. If I'm being honest with you, I have a lot of different insecurities and a lot of doubts in my own head and a lot of talk that is probably not as positive as what you're making it sound like. So I think in each step, I wondered, was this a big mistake? Am I employable? Do I have another path? What will I do with my time? Um, will I be able to thrive or be successful in whatever I choose? So a lot of it was actually not out of a place of trust and confidence, but carried with it a lot of insecurities and self doubt. Again, they played out well, and maybe that's part of what I've reflected on the last couple years is, I'm stronger than I think I am. I'm more capable than I think I am. I'm braver than I think I am. There's a lot that comes with that recent
Yeah.
reflection for me. I'm
Yeah.
not sure though that as I was taking each of those steps, I really thought about any of those things as a driving a driver for that next step.
Yeah. Well, that's an important clarification, and I'm glad you shared that because, I think a lot of people out there, like, they make big steps and there is self-doubt.
Mhm.
And that's just okay, and that's part
Yeah,
of the process. So,
absolutely.
that's important that you shared that. So, how would someone you work closely with you describe you as a leader?
You hear people say all the time, it depends who you ask. I think that that's actually true. I think that you would have some people who would describe me as very loyal, very hardworking, very collaborative, a strategic thinker, uh, someone with very high expectations of myself and also of others. But I think a lot of other people would take those same characteristics and maybe not see them as glowingly. And so, because we all come in with our own, perceptions of things and our own vantage points, how people see me as a leader probably depends what lens they're looking through. I think that, there are certainly some things that I think everybody would agree on. Those are probably a lot of them that I am very strategic, that I work very, very hard, that I really want what's best for whatever my outcome is, whether it's at a company or now with the alliance with DEI Advisors. I'm very goal driven. Where do we want to go and how do I get there? Makes a lot of that happen. I think that I really respect people who want to collaboratively make things better. And so, I like to surround myself for sure with people who I feel like are aligned in the goals, the strategy, the vision, mission, and how we get there. And that's going to bring a lot of different ideas. I'm not saying they have to be my ideas, but bringing ideas and wanting to implement them at the end of the day. But I don't know. I'm like I said, you could probably take a poll right now and get wildly different answers from everybody else.
I don't know. I mean, having gotten to know you over the last year and a half and working very close on the podium committee, it's all sounds very accurate. So it sounds like a very good reflection. And I think, I've seen many of those traits and qualities in how you operate with the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance. And I think those things are what have made it so successful in such a important and growing community,
Well, I
for
appreciate.
sure. So who are you at your core beyond titles and the roles you play?
My goodness, this is where all my reflection the last couple years will definitely come into play. I say that I have a personal mantra that I wake up every day and I want to be the best that I can be. And that might be the best mom, the best wife, daughter, friend, community person, the best employer or employee. And I'm going to make a million mistakes and I'm going to do some things really well. And I wake up tomorrow and I want to do it again and hopefully learn from what maybe wasn't as successful the day before. So I think in some ways, at my core, I'm just someone who's trying to do my best every day.
Hmm.
I also think, though, you mentioned New England earlier. I think in some ways, I'm a small town girl from New Hampshire with big dreams, and it probably um, knowingly and unknowingly guides a lot of what I do. It definitely guides um, who I am as a mom and as a wife. It definitely brings a lot of the values that I was raised with me wherever I go. And so I think that there's a lot of that kind of at my core as well, aside from titles and roles and other things.
Yeah, I can. When you just said that, a small town girl with big dreams, I could definitely relate to that. Could you clarify a little more how you think that has shaped you in your life and career?
Yeah, I will tell you, I think, first of all, I've said this a lot before, but I wanted to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader or a long haul trucker. They were both equally fascinating to me. I talk about, it was pre-internet, it was pre-cable TV. We got one radio channel if the weather was good. If it wasn't, we didn't, that type of thing. So my exposure was very, very limited. But I wanted to see the world. And that's part of where the long haul trucker idea came in. I was just very interested. My parents were very interested in the world. They had traveled a lot. We did not as kids. We didn't have a lot of money. And so we did a lot of station wagon, campground, vacationing as a family. But I think that I felt I loved being in cities. My grandmother was in Boston. I spent a lot of time there. And so I think some of that motivation came from I, I wasn't a small town country girl at heart, but to pursue other things. I knew I had to work hard. I knew that education would be important. I carry those values of um, trust and honesty and care for others and community with me wherever I go, which I think are very much ingrained in New England across the board. So I think a lot of those things I brought with me. And then, at some point I pivoted and I wanted to be a lawyer. I've said this before, maybe LA law or something. I don't know what came on TV. I didn't know any lawyers. I didn't have any in the family. But, that drove me through college, going to law school, getting my first legal job. And so that kind of big dreams of being a lawyer seemed very distant. It didn't seem easily achievable, whether that was financial insecurity or the doubts about whether I was smart enough, capable enough. I had to work really hard to overcome those things to feel like I was achieving what I want. And then I got in the city and I loved it. And I knew I had found the right environment community wise for me. I got married and had kids, and I realized I had found the right family circle for me. So it was just a lot of taking what I learned about myself growing up and implementing that into what each next step would be for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like also just, that desire to be wanting to be part of something bigger than that small town sheltered life a little bit and make an impact on the world.
Yeah, I think, I was also, my dad is someone who cares deeply about people and outcomes of things and wanting to help and make the world a better place. And I know I have a lot of that in me, maybe not in the same ways that he does, but I definitely feel a big sense of that. Education was critically important to my parents. It was critically important to me and then passed on to our daughters as well. So I think there's a lot of threads
Yeah.
in those lessons we learn younger,
Yeah.
earlier on, that we carry maybe in different ways, or they manifest in different ways, but are still there at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah. So earlier you spoke about your that you have high expectations or standards for yourself and that also usually extends to what you expect of other people. Could you describe what those standards are that you hold yourself accountable to and how you model those for others?
I'm not sure those would necessarily be the same thing. I think some of the things I hold myself accountable for are honesty, integrity, credibility, probably above everything else. I was not only raised that way, but very early in my legal career, I recognized that your credibility literally changes lives. And that is a very impactful lesson as a young careerist to see that in your professional life, being truthful, having a reputation of trustworthiness will be very, very important. So I hold myself certainly accountable for that and others as well. How I model it, I'm the first to say when I have made a poor choice, made a mistake, maybe something didn't turn out the right way. I do expect that of others as well. I have no problem walking in and say, hey, I screwed this up. And now how are we going to fix it? But I'm going to own each one I do wrong. If I lose my temper in front of our girls, I'm going to be like, hey, I didn't handle that so well, but let me try to do better. So I think modeling that for sure. I'm also a really positive person at my core. I don't really thrive in negativity or office drama or theatrics or other things. I like to, like I said, figure out where I want to go and how we get there and put a positive spin on things. And not everything, is going to be positive or upbeat, but really at the end of the day, trying to be guided by that. But from a high expectation standpoint, I mentioned that I wake up every day and I want to be my best self. That isn't an overachiever best self. It just means to live my values and make a positive impact, affect things that I think are important for me and the people around me, and wanting others to feel the same way. If I take a job or if I say yes to an opportunity, I want to provide value in that
Yeah.
opportunity. I know that when I say I have high expectations of others, I don't know that I certainly don't hold anyone else to a higher standard than I hold myself. But I think
Yeah.
from that, I want people to feel pride in what they do. I want them to succeed. I want them to put their best foot forward. I want them to contribute to things. I want them to have pride of authorship. If someone writes a professional email, I want it to be correct. Like, I don't want it to be full of typos or mistakes or other things, because I think that shows a lot about who we are. When I say being our best selves, again, I don't think it's an unreasonably high standard. I just really want people to try to be their best self in whatever setting that may be. And that's what I try to model. But like I said, that includes, we're not always going to be our best selves. And when we're not our best selves, modeling what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, something just came up for me. I mean, I think many of us share that desire, when we first wake up in the morning, we have the intention of putting our best foot forward, waking up on the right side of the bed, metaphorically, etc. But as you said, sometimes that doesn't happen. What do you think gets in the way of being that best self? And, I mean, one of the ways you describe that is being in line with your values
Mhm.
and, um, just living up to those expectations that you have for yourself.
I think it can be anything. It can start with self care. I know when I am tired, when I am hungry, when I am not spending quality time with family and friends, when I'm not exercising. We can talk about self care all day long, but I know that
Hmm.
I now know that I am not my best self when I am not taking care of myself. I didn't realize that when I was working. I think especially as women, we say, I'll take care of myself when, and that list of whens is very, very long and we never get to it. And so I definitely think now I am a better mom. I'm a better colleague to people. I'm a better daughter, neighbor, friend when I am taking care of myself. So I think that's part, maybe at its very core. I think sometimes when you are surrounded by negativity, it is easy to get brought down by it. But I also think not everybody wants us to be successful. So sometimes we can allow others who don't have the same vision or the same goals in mind to get in the way of that. Sometimes it might just be being overwhelmed. We've all been
Hmm.
in pressure cooker roles where we are busy 24/7. Sometimes something is going to slip through the cracks, or you're going to forget a meeting, or you're not going to mail something by the time you were supposed to. Those things happen. I think that's part of what gets in the way. I call it reality. Reality gets in the way.
Right.
One of the things I should have said earlier is being the best self. we have all lost people that are very close to us in some way. And I think that I have tried to really live a life that reminds me every day that I'm not guaranteed to be here tomorrow. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I said I like positivity, but for me, that's
Yeah.
actually a very positive thing. So
Yep.
when I go to bed at night, I'm not, it isn't have I lived my best self today because it could be my last one, but I want to make sure that I'm using whatever time I have in ways that are the best for me. And being a mom and being a wife and contributing to the industry or doing whatever it is really important to me. And because I'm not guaranteed tomorrow, I want to take advantage of it. And it could be it's not all highly motivated. It could be that I want to sit on the beach all day long and
Right.
take in
Yeah.
the sound of the ocean and the sand and the sun. It doesn't have to be achieving something great. I just want to make sure that I am spending my time in ways that best serve the things that I want to serve.
Yeah. Well, by the way, sitting on the beach, that's all part of it, right? That's all
Yeah,
part of the living your best life.
absolutely.
And it's, yeah, I mean, it's that idea of, thinking with the end in mind, and how do you want to look back on yourself and who were you in those moments along your path? Yeah, I totally appreciate that for
I was
sure.
going to say, being from Vermont and the snow and everything else, or even mine growing up being in New Hampshire, the beach did not seem like a realistic dream. So,
Right, right. That's right. But I live in the dream, I'll tell you, in another way. I mean, I'm surrounded by the mountains and lakes.
absolutely.
So I'm reminded of it, of the bigger picture stuff all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so speaking of positivity, something that's I've been doing some presentations on transformational leadership, and a big part of that is really using a leadership style that inspires and motivates inspires and motivates people to achieve exceptional results. How do you do that yourself? How do you inspire and motivate the people around you to create impact?
Oh my gosh, that's a really hard one. I think sharing my story lately has had that impact. I've heard that from some people. As you know, I'm incredibly uncomfortable talking about me. I like to talk about me in a way that advances things that I want to advance or initiatives that I want to advance. But I think, as I mentioned, if a small town girl from New Hampshire with very little access and exposure to things can achieve many of the things that I'm incredibly proud of having achieved, then I want other people to also see and know that that is possible for them. And so part of that sharing my story is in hopes that somebody finds anything that I have said relatable and thinks that, okay, this is possible for me or somebody I know that I could share the story with. But I think it's also very motivating for me to figure out how to help others lift themselves up. I don't really believe that we empower others. I think we empower ourselves. But how do we get tools to be able to empower ourselves? So, I'm told that I'm a great connector of people. If I can introduce and build people's networks or relationships for them in some way, I think that can be part of that inspiration and empowerment. If I can provide opportunities, very often, if I get called for something, I'll say, hey, I would love to support that. But have you thought of one of these other leaders, or asking my team to present at a staff meeting or present to the board, or joining a meeting or a call or something else to give exposure and visibility to others? So I think that, I have an opportunity, or I did more so a little bit still today, but I had an opportunity to really provide opportunities to others and wanting to take advantage of that wherever I could so that people then feel empowered to pursue whatever it is that they want. I think insights too. I'm an open book. I tell people this all the time. You can ask me anything you want. I will tell you whatever it is that you may not like it, but I will tell you anything. So I think that when people come to me and they ask for my opinion on something, or how did I do something, or do I, struggle with insecurities or head trash or something. I think that by sharing insights, I think that can be very inspiring and motivating. I look to the people who inspire and motivate me, and how has that happened? And through a lot of it is just time. People have taken time with me to
Yeah.
bring me along. People have, I say this all the time, that the two greatest professional opportunities that I have had came from people who saw something in me that I never saw
Mm,
in myself. And I quite frankly had to be convinced of it. It did not come easily. And so wanting to really do that for others and say, hey, I think you could be great at this. And let me, if
yeah.
you're interested, let me help you figure that path out, or see what you're missing that you might need to be able to pursue that opportunity. So I really like seeing how I have benefited from others and trying to figure out how to implement that for others as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is, I mean, when someone can really pinpoint and see something in you, that in itself, you're right, is so inspiring and does kind of trigger, I think, that person to, want to do their best and want to contribute. And that idea of lifting up people around you, it's so critical. And I've seen how you've done that for many people, including myself. So much gratitude, for that. And yeah, you're making a big impact of the people around you for sure in
I
that way.
appreciate that, Rachel. I think sometimes we just need someone's voice in our head that's louder than our own negative voices. So, or our own self doubts, or, everybody calls it something different. But I think that if I can be that for someone the way others have been that for me, when I have doubted things, when I have questioned
Yeah.
things, and somebody has come in and said, nope, that's not the way we're going to look at it. That's been really helpful for me and has definitely made a tremendous impact. And so I think each of us needs a support system, or needs a network of
Hmm.
people that, good or bad, can call us out on our crap or can lift us up when we need it. I think that's a really important thing. So I try to be that for others, where I am asked. Sometimes when I'm not asked, and I'll just offer, hey, if you're open to it, I'd love to share some feedback. But I think that,
Yeah.
that is one way that can be really um, effective for everybody in helping people feel empowered to do whatever it is they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, earlier you also talked about this idea of like having pride in your effort, and what you achieve. What are you most proud of?
Oh gosh. I'm going to add the word now to that. I think that that is another thing that changes over time. I have a couple things. On the heels of Mother's Day, this is my first Mother's Day as an empty nester with neither of our daughters at home. And so I really was very reflective all day on Mother's Day, and a little bit since then, of how incredibly proud I am of our girls, but also of my parenting in raising them in the way that I wanted, in the way that my husband and I wanted. It's not easy, and they hate it when I say this, but parenting and working is messy. I'm sure parenting alone is messy. I didn't do it
Yeah.
without the work component, but I'm really, really proud of the girls that we have raised, and doing it while having, different successful chapters of my career. I feel really, really proud of that. I mentioned self-care earlier. In this chapter, I have non-negotiables that I am committed to every single day, whether I am traveling to a conference, on vacation, lounging on my couch or on my bed at home. So I'm really proud of my commitment to myself in taking care of me. I'm very proud of the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance and the organizations that are doing incredible work, um, getting to really help amplify messaging of great organizations like Accelerate and other things that have been something that is was very unexpected for me, but has been an incredible opportunity. DEI Advisors, the same thing. When David Kong called, I told him I would say yes to anything he asked me to do. Lesson, and you should find out what it is first. But I'm
Right.
proud of the content that we're putting out and the vulnerability of the leaders that are sharing. and through their insights, empowering personal success in the industry. And I think overall, I mean, I hinted to it earlier, but I'm really proud of myself. I think for the first time in probably 55 years, I can say I'm proud of the person that I am. I'm proud of um, I'm proud of being a mom and a wife. I'm proud of being a daughter. I'm proud of the work that I have done over the years in a lot of different capacities. And that, coming from someone with a lot of insecurities and self doubts and everything else, is a really big step for me to be able to say out loud that I'm really proud of who I am today and all of the pieces in getting there. And I hope I continue to evolve and that continues to be something that transitions over time. But I would say those are probably the four things I'm most proud of today.
Oh, I love those so much. And you said there was this one line that you said about, following through on the commitment to yourself. And that speaks so much to that idea of personal integrity, right? Which I think you shared was one of your values or standards. And that's so critical. I think that's where, a lot of our success comes from. It's not about, what you promise to other people. I mean, that's also important, but first and foremost, what are the promises and commitments that you're making yourself to yourself? And that's how, in the long run that you will feel good about it or not, and what you've achieved.
I think that's such a great point. We have to get past thinking that self care is selfish and these
Mhm.
other terms that I think we attach to. I talked about the hamster wheel all the time. I tell, people early in their career now, that's the time to establish your non-negotiables. What is it that you want to commit to for yourself? And it's not the same thing for everybody. Mine might be more in a physical and mental self-care. I've heard some really great stories about other people's self-care non-negotiables that never crossed my mind. It's what fuels us or what fills our lanterns to allow us to shine brightly. And I think that taking the word selfish out of it will go a long way in thinking I am a better all of these other things when I'm taking care of myself. I think it's really hard to establish new boundaries after you're knee deep in 25 years of them. It's doable, but I think it's hard.
Yeah.
And so it really took me stepping off the hamster wheel to say, this is not sustainable. I have to do a much, much better job of
Yeah.
taking care of myself. And then seeing how it played out, I was like, God, I wish I had done this 25 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, it's hard. I mean, raising children, having a career, it's not easy. For sure. It's definitely a challenge and a constantly evolving and emerging situation, I think. Um, looking back at some of your experiences throughout your career and your life, when have you underestimated yourself?
Rachel, I probably underestimate myself in different ways on a daily basis, from something small to something big. But the one that jumps out right away, many years ago when I pivoted from being a trial attorney to becoming an association executive, I had never worked at a company before. I had only worked for law firms. We are our own beast. It is a very different environment, a very different org chart, and everything else. And I really didn't know anything about corporate life. And I showed up and again, the insecurities, I was petrified of failing. I was petrified of not being successful. And so I went into this, what is my best self every day? How do I have high expectations for myself? And I set out to know everything I could know about the company. And I wanted to know, what does membership do? What does events do? What is business development, advocacy, whatever everything was that we were doing. I didn't know any of those departments. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know how they contributed to the bigger picture. I knew what I was hired to do, and I knew how to do what I was hired to do. And I didn't know the basic things about budgeting or forecasting or whatever. And so I really set out
Right.
to learn everything I could. And after a period of time, the corporate and elected leadership came to me and said, "Hey, we're interviewing for this COO role, and we think the reason that we're not finding the right person is that it's you." And
Oh.
I was like, No, it is not easy. And I had a lot of reasons for it. I mean, I've said very, very audibly, I had to go Google COO. I thought people went to school for operations. I didn't have confidence in myself as a leader at that point. In that capacity, I had led in other ways. But it really took a lot, many, many months and a lot of encouraging to show me that by virtue of the insecurities I had and wanting to learn the company, that I actually had learned all of our operations. I knew everything,
Wow.
not everything, but I knew a lot about how everything worked with everything else within the business, what all the roles were, how they contributed to the overall success. Truly the definition of someone who runs operations at a trade association. And so that underestimating myself, nope, I won't be any good at that. I'm not the right person for that. I mean, I said it loudly and regularly. And one day after being approached again and having another conversation about it, I came home and I spoke to my family and I started thinking through some aspects of it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot. I didn't know if it would be successful or not, but it turns out I was really good at it. And then that led to, of course, being the interim CEO for the company and a lot of opportunities industry wide for me. But underestimating myself, even though I'd had an incredibly successful career up until that point, that again was a place that I did not think that I had the right background, tools, intelligence, relationships, whatever it was to really be that successful in that role. And that turned out to be not the case at all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what a testament to, yeah, when, you had some doubts about your expertise and ability, but you didn't let that stop you to be that best self in that situation and take one of those risks that you were talking about earlier.
Well,
Um,
I think too, you take that small town girl from New Hampshire and you say, hey, one day you're going to be CEO of a trade association. Those things don't compete. Like that
right.
isn't the thread that you were talking about. That was never the thread. That wasn't one of
Right.
the big dreams. That didn't even seem dreamable to me.
Right.
And so I think some of it just comes from, do we underestimate ourselves and limit what our potential is, what is possible for us? And each of those things provided incredible fulfillment for me and great benefit for our members, for the industry, and other things. So, taking
Yeah.
that leap again, we talked about risk earlier. I think underestimating myself held me back, but fortunately, I had someone championing to say, I'm not listening to what you're saying. I'm going to tell
Yeah.
you all the reasons that I know that you will be successful at this opportunity.
Yeah. Well, what that speaks to is, really, what I'm taking away from that is just our ability to be sometimes objective about ourselves. It's really difficult. Um, how do you think that we can kind of when we're in these situations of self-doubt and not really being able to accurately perceive who we are, how do we almost like step out of ourselves and evaluate it from somebody else's perspective?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and using the word objective, actually I hadn't thought of that, but that's such a great way of looking at it. I think there's a couple of things. One is, how often do we say this is how I would advise someone else, but I don't take my own advice? So taking a moment to say, if Rachel V came to me with this same opportunity, what would I tell her? Um I'm not good about doing that, but I think that that's a way that we can each step back. Those of us who think we tend to give good advice or good insights and other things, how can we turn that? The other is what I mentioned earlier, is having a support system. I didn't go to
Mm,
anyone in my support system and say, hey, I have this opportunity, what do you think? I
yeah.
unilaterally decided I was not going to be successful at it. I wasn't a good fit. But maybe going to people and saying, hey, be honest with me. It may be that they say, you know what, I'm not sure that that's best suited for you either. But they may say, which
Yeah.
has turned out to be what it was, of, I actually think you have a lot to offer in that area. So maybe a combination of those, if we want to use our own advice to others, hold it against ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm trying to get over self doubt as well, I try to position it differently. Like if I get asked to speak somewhere and I think, oh my gosh, that, I I'm not the right speaker for that. I think to myself, oh, well, that conference organizer, they're really good at what they do. They wouldn't ask me if they didn't think I was a
Right.
value add. And I'm really able to turn my own head narrative if when I position it that way. That's only recent. I've only recently come up with this new strategy of try to
Yeah.
overcome it by giving credit to someone else rather than beating myself up and looking at it from their shoes. Well, that person, Rachel, you think very highly of them. So if you think
Yeah.
highly of them, asking you must be a good decision because otherwise you wouldn't have they wouldn't have the respect of you that they do.
Right. Well, it makes me think too, like you could even in those situations, you could even ask them and say, so I'm curious, what is it that you see in me that you think makes me the right person for this?
Yeah.
And I think if you cumulatively build up those experiences over time, it can also help reshape those beliefs that you have about yourself as they're kind of like confirmed by other people.
Well, and feedback, Rachel, is a really interesting thing because a lot of people say they want it, but when they get it, they really only want it if it's positive. So I think, if we constantly seek feedback and we have a way of processing maybe positive feedback and feedback of how we could be better, and we're actually willing to listen with open ears and implement, I think you're right. Muscle memory over time maybe helps you. Okay, I'm getting a bunch of feedback that I'm not as successful at this. Now, what's the curiosity? How do I do it differently? Or how
Right.
do I do it better? Or how do I learn a new way of doing it? And so I think feedback is incredibly valuable if we're open to it. That's why I said it depends. When you ask me, what would people say about me? Not everybody loves feedback. But if you ask
Yeah.
me, I'm going to give you honest feedback. So don't
Yeah.
ask me if you don't want to know. And, it's going to be productive. It's never going to be anything that's to hurt or harm or bring anyone down. But it is going to be if there is something that I can offer that I think will ultimately be a value add for someone. And so I do love feedback. I love hearing it. After I moderate, I always ask my panels, I always ask the conference organizers, could I do things differently, better? Did I give everyone um, you know, equal time? Did I prep you enough? Like I mean, and I've been doing it for a long time and I think I'm good at it, but I can always learn from what other people have to offer, especially people I haven't moderated before. They become my prime targets of, can you offer me any feedback moving forward?
Yeah, no, and I mean, you have to be, like you said, you have to be open to both the positive and the constructive feedback, which is critical for learning and growing for sure.
Absolutely.
So we're just about coming to the end of our time, but I wanted to ask you at least one more question. What vision would you pursue if you had everything you needed to succeed right now?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to pick two. Um, I'm going to piggyback on one we talked about earlier. My vision would be to live at the beach where I see and hear the ocean and the sand and the sun every single day. So I would pursue a personal self care vision of beach life. I'm going to make no secret of it. I would love to see, especially in the hospitality industry, many, many more women in the C suite. In fact, while there's a lot of momentum and a lot of positivity happening, I think over the last couple months, we're seeing a lot of reorganizations, a lot of announcements that feel less than supportive of heading in that direction. So if I had all the tools I needed to succeed, I would want to put them all to use in trying to elevate as many women into positions of leadership across all aspects of the hospitality industry. I love this industry. I think you can have any career that you want and then pick this as your industry. I think it's incredible. I mean, like I said, small town girl becomes lawyer, becomes association executive,
Hmm.
and now this. I just think it's such an incredibly special industry, as I know you do. But I think that the shortage or lack of women in the C-suite is not reflective of the communities we serve as an industry. It's not reflective of the talent that we have in the
Hmm.
industry, leaders. And I would love to have my magic wand and all of the resources that I need to effectuate that change as quickly as we can as an industry. It's not a women's issue, it's an industry wide issue. And having everybody collaboratively come together to see some real impactful change in that area would definitely be the vision.
Yeah, well, here. I'm fully in support. I'm here for it. I'm with you fighting the good fight and looking forward to continue to make that impact.
Well, Rachel, and
Well,
certainly your leadership in that area, you're not just here for me, you're actually leading charges. You're helping people develop the skills and the relationships they need to be successful and to feel inspired and empowered and taking a leadership role within the Alliance, especially in getting more women on conference stages. So important for visibility and career trajectory and growth. So you are not sitting on the sidelines. Therefore, you're actually helping to lead the charge. And that's something to certainly be commended for, and what we need to see much more of to make sure that the vision that you and I share is happens as quickly as it can.
oh, well, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure working together on these things. Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience today?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, invest in yourself. Invest in your professional development, invest in your self-care, find time to unwind and have a life outside of work and career and other things. But really, I say that I am evolving. I absolutely am spending a lot of time reflecting and growing and changing. And, if I hope that everybody has an opportunity to do that same thing. But just invest in yourself, whether it be professionally or personally. You are worth it, and you
Yeah.
are going to be your own best advocate in everything that you do.
Well, great. Well, that's very sound advice and a great way to end today. Thank you so much, Rachel Humphrey, for joining us today on the Travel Leader podcast. Until next time, this is Rachel Vandenberg, and have a great day.